you asked about higher states of consciousness. So there are many states of consciousness, and each state of consciousness expresses its own reality. The fourth state of consciousness is called soul consciousness, where you become aware of the observer in the midst of the observation. So right now, as you're listening to me, try this. As you're listening to me, turn your attention to the one who's listening. So as you're listening to me, become aware of the listener. And if you feel a presence, that's your soul. And when you have soul consciousness, that awakens dormant potentials, like intuition, like creativity, like insight, like imagination. But beyond soul consciousness is something called cosmic consciousness. Now actors are very aware of this state of consciousness because, you know, they play different roles. So there's a part of them that's in the role, and there's a part of them that says, that's not really me, I'm just acting it out. Well, when you realize that your present life is an act that you're putting on, and even in your real life, you put on many acts. One day you are playing the role of a father, next day the role of a son, the third day the role of a businessman, and so on. It's your destiny to play an infinity of roles, but you're not the roles you're playing. And you, in a sense, are in the role and not in it at the same time. You are a spiritual being having a human experience instead of a human being having a spiritual experience. That's cosmic consciousness. And then beyond that is something called divine consciousness. So divine consciousness is when you feel the presence of the same consciousness that's in you in the objects of your perception. So you look at this, and this is a table, but it's also a piece of wood. It's also is a tree, actually. Therefore, it's rainbows and sunshine and earth and water and wind and air and the infinite void and the whole ecosystem. It's the lives of carpenters and their families and factories and trade unions and so on. And you pierce that, and there's a consciousness right here. When you become aware of the consciousness in the objects of your perception, not just here, but everywhere, then God is not difficult to find. God is impossible to avoid, because there's nowhere that God is not. Art comes from going inside, whether you're creating music or a painting or writing a screenplay, any art, it comes from going within. Science comes from going out there. So creativity, when it comes from going into the world or looking at the world out there, is the expression of our mind. And science, in many ways, is an expression of our mind, but art is actually the expression of our soul. Art is the expression of our spirit. And that's why, you know, what's his name? T.S. Eliot once said, poetry and art are a raid on the inarticulate. The art expresses the soul, the spirit of a person, but frequently it goes even beyond. It expresses the soul of a collective psyche. It expresses archetypal imagination. At least great art is more than a personal expression of the soul. It's an expression of a higher consciousness.
And now on behalf of Cinequest board, and most importantly to me, the many volunteers, the thousands of volunteers who have worked for Cinequest for 20 years to serve the world, the community of film artists, the community of students around the globe, we're very honored to present you with our Life of a Maverick Award on behalf of their service and yours.
Dr. Deepak Chopra, how do artists best deal with setbacks and the constant challenge of people not accepting their work?
I think an artist has to really realize that as long as they're dependent on externals, they're not going to find true expression of their inner joy. So you've got to learn as an artist to be independent of the good and bad opinions of the world and express your truest passion. I always remind artists of that poem of Rumi where he says, I want to sing like birds sing, not worrying who listens or what they think. So sing your song, and as long as you do it passionately, sooner or later you're going to strike gold.